Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time and joining in. Vic, over to you.
Thank you very much. A very good morning and a good afternoon, everyone. And thank you again for joining us today. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome such a diverse group of leaders from across India's sports education, high performance, and industry ecosystem. My name is Vic Singh, and I'm Trade Investment Commissioner, posted in wonderful Bangalore and looking after all our education and skills interests in the region. From an Austrade perspective, we see sport as one of the most powerful connections between Australia and India. And I think this was evident when the Honorable Prime Minister Modi was there in Australia a few weeks ago as well. Opportunities for us in sports education, in research, in workforce development, and of course, in high performance sport. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge our wonderful partner, Acumen, that's been helping us shape and convene today's discussion. Also, a very special welcome to our colleagues from Griffith University, who will be sharing their experience and insights later in the session. And of course, to Naomi McCarthy, the director of the Sports College, who will be representing the Griffith story on how universities contribute to athlete development, industry engagement, and what collaboration could look like in India. And for India, I believe, Naomi, you've also got some wonderful stats on Griffith University and the recent Commonwealth Games. Now, this is India's sporting moment. There is a quiet but determined transformation underway in India's sporting landscape. For many years, the sports story has been largely dominated or centered on cricket. Today, that picture looks very different with the advent of professional leagues that are expanding, new sports that are gaining traction, sports tourism is growing, and increasingly India is being recognized as a destination for international sporting events and organizations. In fact, we had the Honorable Assistant Minister Julian Hill in Bangalore last week, and one of the activities that he did was to sign a new collaboration or to witness a new collaboration for swimming and swimming coaches here in Bangalore. So really kind of demonstrating the move away from just cricket. India is entering what some have called the golden decade of sport. India is home to 1.4 billion people, yet its long-term sporting ambitions will ultimately depend on the thousands of coaches, researchers, sports scientists, administrators, and educators who will support elite athletes. Beyond the field of play, sports is becoming a significant economic sector as well, generating opportunities in coaching, in sports science, athlete management, governance, performance, sports business. To add to that, we're looking at sports tech, sports infrastructure, sports nutrition. There's so many different elements of sport that we're involved in. But as India's sporting ambitions grow, so does the need for the systems and talent that support them. So why do universities matter in this whole ecosystem? There's a quote that my team provided, which is medals are made in systems, not stadiums. So while we've got great facilities and they are very important, the long-term sporting success depends really on strong institutions, skilled professionals, quality coaching, research, and athlete support. And that's where the universities play a very critical role. Around the world, higher education institutions not only contribute through teaching and research, but also athlete development, sports science, industry partnerships, and collaborations with government and sporting organizations. And we've seen that impact in Australia with our national sporting systems. In fact, following the establishment of the Australian Institute of Sport in 1981 and significant investment that went into coaching, sports science, athlete pathways, and university partnerships, Australia transformed from winning 24 medals at the 1976 Montreal Olympics to 58 medals at the Sydney 2000 Olympics, and has since remained one of the leading Olympic sporting nations, and really delighted that Griffith University plays a huge part in that. In today's session, we are keen to hear from your perspectives and how universities and higher education institutions can play a high role in supporting high-performance sport and the wider sports economy. Most importantly, today's session is intended to be a dialogue where we are here to listen, learn from your experiences, insights, and your priorities. I'll leave you with a thought. For every athlete standing on a podium, there are thousands more in the system behind them: coaches, educators, researchers, administrators, and support staff. Building that ecosystem will ultimately determine the success of India's sporting future. This is the real opportunity for India. With that, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to the discussion ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick, for the appropriate introduction, I should say. That's sort of setting the context for the entire discussion that we look forward to. I'll just quickly introduce Acumen to everybody on the webinar today. And we are a 18-year-old organization. We deal with global universities. So we have currently about 120 plus leading universities as our global partners. Out of that, about 18 are in the top QS rating. And we cover about 25 plus markets that we deliver. At Acumen, we believe in measurable and long-term impact. So when we work with our clients, we ensure that they get actionable inputs from us. So some of the things that we ensure and include in our research or our work is so global reach and local insights. Any representation that any university wants in India, we bring the trust factor attached to it. We believe in strong data driven strategy because otherwise you are taking decisions without having the backup or without having the data to support it. We are end-to-end support system for any of our partners because, and purposely we call them partners. We don't want to be calling them clients because we work hand in hand with them to ensure that they get the desired output from the association that they have with Acumen, which is why it brings us to a collaborative partnership that we ensure with them, and we ensure that they get the results out of the activity. These are some of the leading global universities that we partner with. Of course, it's a fraction of what we work with, but these are some indicative names that you can see. And this is I mean, we have offices across 25 plus markets. And when I say offices, it's manned office. So we have our teams who are capable of delivering stuff and sort of sit out of these offices regularly. So that's about Acumen. I would hand it over to Smriti. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I'd just like to start by echoing Vic's points, and on behalf of Austrade and Acumen, very delighted to welcome you all to this roundtable to discuss India's high-performance sports economy. Our intention all along with this roundtable has been to bring together a group of leaders and decision makers from across the ecosystem in India, whether it's sports, higher education, athlete development, industry, to really share your insights and your experience. And of course, to have our colleagues from Griffith here to highlight the case studies and the success story from the Australia context. To kick off the roundtable, I'd like to start with a round of introductions, starting with our guest, Naomi McCarthy, OAM, Director of Griffith Sports College. We also have Rick Chapman, Director of Transnational Education at Griffith University, Ashini Malhotra, Regional Director for South Asia. And from the Indian ecosystem, we're delighted to welcome the leaders that are bringing all the diverse perspectives to the table, starting with Siddharth Deshmukh, who is Director at the Symbiosis School of Sports Science. We have Ahana Mehrotra, Founder and Principal Lawyer at AM Sports Law and Management Co. We have Akanksha Thapak, Director at ISSO, Kashyap Kapoor, who is the GM Director's Office from Masters Union, Professor Arun Maya, Dean at the Manipal College of Health Professions from the Manipal Academy of Higher Education, or MAHI, and we have Dr. Ren Dias, Assistant Professor from Sports Management Faculty from the Manipal School of Commerce and Economics, also at MAHI. So I will hand it back to Vishal to lead the first segment of the roundtable and kick off a very engaging conversation. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. I'll just present few slides for our discussion. This is just sort of setting the context, and then of course we'll open the floor with some questions and insights and inputs from everybody who's participating today. Can you see my screen?
No, yeah, it's appearing.
Okay. So from a Indian sports landscape, I mean, we are at a stage where we may call evolving because we are still not evolved yet. And there are shifts, positive, very positive entire ecosystem and the sector at large, where we are transitioning from a very unorganized sector to passion driven and structured. Even the commercial angle that was sort of missing till about few years back is come into play, which helps grow the sector. So any sector with not a commercial acumen will never grow beyond a point, because then it's more like a CSR activity which will remain as a secondary activity, or a compulsion for some of the corporates to take up. But bringing that commercial angle makes it exciting and sort of commercially viable for everybody to look into, which is why more players are looking at it seriously, ever, like more than ever they did in the past. Of course, it gets supported by multi-sport league. I mean, great initiative IPL, which started about 18 years back, but now it's grown into multiple leagues, multiple sports, which is why the entire ecosystem is growing. And like Vic closed his opening note, that behind one athlete there are like thousand athletes waiting to be unearthed and sort of come to surface. Similarly, when we see the leagues, we see 10 players or 15 players playing on the ground, but they have a battalion of like 50 people or 100 people supporting them behind them on a daily training basis, looking at their nutrition, looking at their physiotherapy, looking at their psychology and stuff like that. And of course, policy support, which we'll touch upon very briefly. There is constant push from the government also in terms of launching new policies which will sort of support the growth and of the entire ecosystem. This is just talking about the central government budget that they have allocated for sports. And this is not all the budget that you have in India from a structure perspective. There is budget at the central level, and then there is budget at the state level. So every federation and the district also gets a separate budget. But even if you look at the top number, which is at the center, we have about 16% growth, the number almost doubling in 4 years. So there is a push from the government. They are looking at this seriously. And some of these numbers that we see on the screen today, which is about 4,500 crore, was never heard of from a government initiative perspective. And of course, there is a constant push on not only growing the sports, but the sports good, and which also includes R&D, design, everything. So there is a separate budget allocated for that as well. So from a budget perspective, and for the Australian team joining here, we have about 670 million carved out for sports and sports related initiatives, and a separate 75 million Australian dollars for the domestic sports and R&D and manufacturing. This, I think, most of the people on the call today would have noticed. I mean, 31st July 2026, mega cabinet approval of the Khelo India initiative, which is carving out about 36,000 crores over the next 5 years, which is great allocation of funds. And there are some softer initiatives which are imbibed into this budget, which is talking about the emerging Khelo India athletes, the National Coach Accreditation Board, boost to sports science, and stronger global partnerships. And the last point is, like we keep telling, it's last but not the least, and that is one of the intent of this discussion as well, and which is why we have requested our global partners, which is the Griffith team, to join today, because you want to see that happening. I mean, there are policies that government can make and sort of release, but it's the people like us who have to sort of implement those and make things happen of that. There is constant support from private capital as well. I mean, it's there are the two segments that work simultaneously. So of course, government keeps pushing from their perspective, but even private sector ends up spending a considerable amount of money on sports. So this is just talking about one number, which is the sports sponsorship. Of course, right now, a lot of this money goes into the franchisees and the leagues, largely cricket. But of course, needless to say, the other sports are picking up. So from number perspective, it's more than 15,000 Indian rupees crores, and Australian dollar, if I convert, it's about 2.25 billion. So there is constant league expansion that's happening. There is constant CSR flows. In fact, the last 3 years growth on CSR funding is tremendous. I mean, people are spending conscious money on sports and looking at this as a serious sector to support. And needless to say, the tech investments and the focus of Indian VCs and global VCs to associate and partner with sports tech firms which are emerging from every nook and corner of the country is also sort of a great initiative that we should keep an eye on. So what brings us to is some of the challenges, potential gaps in the current ecosystem, which of course, I mean, this is from our understanding, and we would love to hear everybody's thoughts here. I mean, the distinguished guests who are here, and they can put more light and enlighten us and give more details on each of these potential challenges and gaps that we see. So grassroots is one of the one of the issue that we face. So talent gets identified, but it's lost in transit. I mean, we've seen that happening. A lot of these kids between the seventh and tenth standard, they start with sports early on, and then they drop off because everybody says, "Oh, we want to look at academic as a career. We don't want to look at sports as a career." That mindset has to change. Of course, that change will not happen overnight, but as ecosystem players, I think we all have to work towards that, saying, okay, sports can be a career and you should look at it. Of course, from a curriculum perspective, there is curriculum that is outdated. We have to upgrade ourselves and update ourselves to ensure that theory gets supported by practicals as well. But even from a theory and knowledge perspective, I think we have to keep update of what's happening globally, which is also one of the things that we would love to cover today. From governance perspective, of course, there is inefficiencies at the federations. I mean, it still works as a government department, but yeah, I mean, they are becoming better, but not at the level that we would have loved them to be. So there is that effort that goes in, and the time in getting things approved at certain levels takes inordinate time, which shouldn't be for the system and for the ecosystem to grow. And of course, from an infrastructure perspective, I think we would rank one of the lowest on that because we don't have enough infrastructure here. And government is pushing their agenda in terms of growing the infrastructure. Of course, looking at the 2036 Olympics, and there are efforts from government. But I think private participation in sort of concentrated efforts on growing and creating enough infrastructure should be there. From a Australia and India sports collaboration perspective, I mean, there are a few pointers. There are conscious efforts from both sides of the government as well, where we are looking at bilateral synergies. We are looking at high performance ecosystems. We are looking at education and workforce, which is also something that we would love to cover today. Commercial out opportunities and the vision. I mean, from India's perspective, of course, we want to be one of the top sporting nation by 2047. So Viksit Bharat, which we call it, and we want to be actually a developed nation and developed on all aspects, including sports. So that's from here. Thank you. I just stop sharing this. I'll just sort of request each of the participants to, I mean, I pick up names and go through each of the participants and sort of request your views. And then we can sort of sync up everything together towards the later part of the conversation. So, of course, grassroots was one of the point that we touched upon on my slide. So, Akanksha would request to start with you from your experience working across the school sports ecosystem. I mean, where do you see the gaps? Where do you see the talent losing? Any key pointers or any key highlights that you would want to put on the table, and anything from a ecosystem perspective that should be done, or the role that the school should play to avoid these drop-offs and encourage sports along with the academic aspiration. So right now it's not even considered along with academic aspiration for any
Yeah.
kid. I mean, they are saying this is like the third or the fourth thing that I would look at. How do we bring it par with the academic goals that a student has?
So thank you, Vishal. One thing I'm so happy to see that the synergies are same, and as you say, the shift has happened, but it will not happen overnight. And but we see, because we have been in the industry for almost 12 years now, and we see that the shift has happened in schools. Thoughts of parents have changed, and all of that has happened, but it is not what we require at the level when we are thinking about 2036. Olympics coming in, Commonwealth coming in, all that still needs a lot of things. And till the time we keep saying sports as a extra activity or extracurricular activity, it will never be at par with academics. And what I see sports is teaching you a lot of things, and it has to be like academics. It has to be part of academic. And when we deal with international schools, although in the holistic approach they have kept sports as part of the system, but still every player after 10th, or when they are they talk about universities, admissions, and in other portfolios, not into the sports sciences or sports management, or there are multiple things like we were discussing, data analytics, or uh, maybe now the referees are getting created, the anchors are a part of. So the ecosystem is big, and if they have abilities, they should think about this as a career. And this thought will come when the parents also start thinking that way. uh, and with some of the universities offering in India and many universities offering outside, that shift will happen in the due course. But yeah, we see there are gaps, especially in connect to their sports as a career. So the gap is there, not infrastructure wise. Infrastructures are getting created, and there are good talents. Coaches definitely need to upgrade, because coaches are still not getting upgraded to the world standards. But yes, we are doing some part of it by getting the world standard coaches to India and upgrading them in our school ecosystem. But the most important aspect, what we feel, is the kids should see the vision of career in their play. It should not be just for fun, and it should not be an extracurricular activity. Because nowadays, what I feel is sports is teaching more than anything else is teaching in classroom. So that we are building up. We have done a program with some universities coming up, showing their courses available, and people understanding the thought process of how they can be continuing sports along with earning money. And I think leagues and all of that, IPL has played a great role, so that people can think, no, this can be a career, and this can be, this can get money to in general. But other
Absolutely.
leagues with volleyball, yes, this has become different now.
No, absolutely. In fact, curriculum can educate you, but sports can actually develop your
Build
character
you.
as a, yeah, develop your character as an individual. So it's a
Yes.
holistic development that happens if you take up sports. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Kashyap, I'm jumping on to you right now for the next one. Just trying to understand from employer's perspective, because you train people who sort of end of your, I mean, duration with you face the potential employers in the industry. So what capabilities are they expecting from the graduates? And I mean, where do you see conventional sports management programs in India and the conventional study guides that we had in India is falling short? Or what are the recent developments that you see in the ecosystem? And if you could sort of throw light on that, that would be great. Thank you.
So, thank you, Vishal, and thank you to the esteemed panel present on this webinar. I echo with your thoughts, and even Akanksha. And when I remember that when I was applying for my sports management program outside India, there are very few universities that I could apply for. And obviously, coming from a very humble background, the amount of investment that I had to do was very large, and the ROI that we usually calculate, that what kind of a job will I get from here, and what kind of exposure will I get from here, was minuscule. So, and in India at that time, I'm talking about almost 10 years ago, when I was looking for my post-graduation MBA, we did not have much opportunities because the first thing that usually people feel that an MBA in sports management is nothing but the E is usually event management, going on operations and doing event-related roles, which I believe are important. I won't deny that. People who generally do not come with work X after their graduation, going on operations and opening those doors are important. However, the perception is very much that either sports is equal to extracurricular. That's what our schools have trained up for, a white day shoe and a PT day. That's all sports was during my school times. No investment in talent or having a pathway for good talent to go out and represent your district, your state, national, and maybe that aspect, because everyone was shouldering off that this is not my responsibility. And again, when it comes to post graduation, the E is basically event management, nothing beyond that. However, when
So
today when I was designed, sure, Vishal, go ahead.
no, so can I sort of lean towards saying that event management as a career gets a red carpet and people get easy opportunities, but what are the other roles that get difficult to
Correct.
fill in from a employer perspective, saying they have five roles that they need to offer? Of course, event management, like you said, gets a red carpet, but what are the other two, three big roles that do not get filled up with the right set of candidate, and there is compromise that happens? And how can institutes which are here, I mean, the esteemed panel that we have today, can potentially play a role in filling up that gap and the misalignment that happens today in the industry?
So, recruiters out today are not looking for people who have just simply understand sports. That's something that you can do over a cup of coffee or just from your own passion. They're looking for people who understand the business through the lens of sport, which means that they have their own problems. Do you understand how leagues run? Do you understand how commercial strategy run? Do you understand how supply chain product life cycle works? How to do valuations for athletes, how to bring athletes, new age athletes, build their social channels, bring sponsorships and partnership opportunities for them. Recruiters out there, and I'm not talking about only leagues and athletes. I'm talking about across retail, manufacturing, media. I'm talking about nutrition, fitness. They have their own problems. They're looking for skill set. They're looking for sharp mindset. The people looking for, did your education in the time that you invested in your post graduation or MBA, did you solve for something? And that E at Masters Union that we have is entrepreneurship. We very, the pedagogy is aspect that build something, learn something, try, build, fail, but the point is get your hands dirty. So for us, the exposure, which I feel the traditional institutions in India have totally lacked in terms of giving the right exposure. It usually has been, okay, we'll take you to a EPL club or or make you watch a match. We say no, go to a Nivea or a Decathlon, learn supply chain there. We say that you go and get real problem of a fan code of a product and solve that particular problem, or maybe give a solution to that. That's the one day challenges that we've built in our curriculum. So 50% at our institution, and the mindset is that we learn, but 50% is that we apply. And that's the reason that this aspect of bridging the gap has to be application. Knowledge will help you build, skill sets and experience is what helps you open doors and scale. So Vishal, recruiters are there looking for skill set, exposure, you becoming from a solution first mindset, and if you can do it, they're happy to have a conversation over a cup of tea for how you can join ahead. Simple as that.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, honestly, this applies across the institutions. I mean, sports is, of course, one example, but I think it applies to every cause that universities and institutions offer. So, I'm just splitting like two segments. Professor Maya and Dr. Daz, this is for you. Uh, from a university perspective, what are the significant academic and institutional barriers on developing or delivering sports as a multidisciplinary course? And from career curriculum perspective, do you think that the current curriculum is aligned to the sports outcome? If not, then what can change? And from a elite sports perspective, what are the most pressing capability gaps, or how are we as India trying to address the capability gaps in the elite sports, which includes everything right from your performance analytics to psychology to rehab and overall athlete development. So, Professor Maya and
Yeah,
Dr. Das, if you can throw some light on this, please. Thank you.
yeah. Very good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Myself, Dr. Arun Maya. I'm the Dean of Manipal College of Health Profession, Manipal Academy of Higher Education. It's one of the top-ranked university in the country. And maybe just I will give a few points about our existing sports academics and the research. Then I will highlight on the gap. At Manipal, from the last more than 25 years, we have been offering the various academics in sports like sports physiotherapy, sports science, sports psychology, sports management, and sports nutrition. These are all the various programs we are offering. And also looking at the need of a very comprehensive institution. Now the university is also established a separate institutions called the Manipal Institute of Sports Science. So in all these comes under the one umbrella in terms of the academics, in terms of collaboration, research, and as well as the capacity building. And the most importantly, I'm very happy to share that a few of our sports physiotherapists and sports scientists have been placed across the globe and also in a reputed positions in the Indian sports system or the sports academy. Some of them are the personal physiotherapist or the sports scientist to the elite sportsmen in the country. I may not mention the name. So looking at this, the Mahesh vision, we have an excellent facility in all our 4 campuses. With respect to our higher educational, the students, we have created a good infrastructure for the sports, both the outdoor as well as the indoor sports complex in all our campuses. However, there are a lot of opportunity for us to strengthen. Maybe one important aspect. Hello?
Yes, Dr. Maya, we can hear you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, one important aspect is the first gap is I think at the community, we don't have a awareness, especially in the young generation, like the school-going children. And just one example, recently I visited Australia. I'm very happy to share that I got an opportunity to visit the various facilities of the other universities, including the Carlton institutions of sports, where even a class 3 or class 2 students, they start developing their career in the sports. That type of awareness is not created in our system. So I think when we are parallelly strengthening our infrastructure, it is important for us to start creating an awareness in the young people and also focusing on the talent hunt. When we say the talent hunt, not training them at the end of their career, so then you are not fit for the cricket or the other games. Rather, in the beginning itself, the integration of the sports research is very, very important. Examples like the genetic analysis of an individual, where it gives a direction for us to properly train them in the specific sports activity. I think maybe this is the one important aspect we need to start in the beginning. If we are, as rightly mentioned by the Vishal, by 2036, we wanted to be hosting or the India want to be a very prominent in the sports or in the Olympics. I think we need to work in this direction. Thereby, we will be able to identify the very talented the children in our the society. The next important thing is with respect to the capacity building. We have a lot of sports coach, the sports physical educator, or the other various professionals working in the field. Maybe it is important for us to strengthen their skills. So there is a lot of opportunity for us to start the capacity building programs like the upskilling or the reskilling type of programs. The third important thing in the higher educational institutions, especially in the sports science, sports management, or other institutions, sports related institution, we need to strengthen our curriculum. As of now, every university is having their own curriculum. even though we don't have a very well specific curriculum called one curriculum or the one nation, one curriculum. That type of systems we don't have. I think it is important for the very progressive universities to come together and then develop a curriculum so that across the systems in the country, we need to have a similar type of the academics, the training or the research in the sports. Thereby, we'll be able to strengthen our sports. The last point is with respect to the establishing the high performance centers or the creating a new infrastructure is very, very essential. Integrating the technology, digital technology in the sports, academics and the research is also very, very essential. These are the few points from my side.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Meyer.
Yeah, I'll just ask Dr. Ren to share few points from my colleague, Dr. Ren also will highlight few points.
Yes, Dr. Das.
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. If you see a current Indian status of sports, we have second richest TRP sport, that is IPL, is from India. Unfortunately, we do not have a professionals to manage professionals. At the same time, we see that you see that 60% of hike every year on the fan base, from $58 billion to $130 billion, we are projecting in 2030 that Indian sports economy to be. At the same time, we see that a 60% hike in the fan base, 19% of the hike every year in the fan base. And you see that 60% of the fans are coming from the rural part of India. And out of that, 36% are women fans are coming. And the most important thing is that fan engagement is becoming more and more popular in the recent days. And every sport that you see in India, we see that cricket, most of the people think that cricket IPL has become a threat for other sport. But at the same time, we see that the rise of Prime Volleyball League, or you see that Indian Badminton League, Indian Super League, or you see that any of the leagues in India, it is giving a lot of promotion for the budding talents in the grassroots level. But having said and done, when you talk about the grassroots level development, I'm sure a lot of people heard about the Kelo India tribals. And community engagement of sports and talent scouts, especially in the place where the Manipal is, we are from the coastal part of Karnataka. And you see there is a fishermen's community and tribal community. The talent hunt, if you see they are, by default, their core muscles, calf muscles, thigh muscles are naturally built strong. And unfortunately, the talent scout is not happening in those lines. So the majority of the part is like, if you see a school point of view, the rural schooling is having a lot of talents, and we need to strengthen the physical education teachers, the PT teachers in the school. Their empowerment is very, very important. Now, to talk about the physical anatomy and human biology, the most of the school physical education teachers are not aware of this. To create awareness about this, educating the physical education teachers and conducting the inter-school tournament and having a minor leagues and competition amongst the school. And school sports is going to become a fulcrum over a period of time for a talent scout. So here is a requirement where I strongly feel that the school tournaments, empowering the physical education teacher and doing the community engagement of sports is much, much required to empower or to look into Commonwealth 2030 or to be the part of Olympic 2036. I'm sure if you are looking to see the more number of medals, these are the areas which need to be highlighted on. Thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate that. In fact, from a government perspective, just highlighting, there is Kirti, which is the Kelo India Rising Talent Identification. Of course, they have launched this initiative, but like I said, I mean, government can't achieve everything on their own. So the private ecosystem has to sort of support that development. Thank you, but appreciate your inputs. Siddharth, coming to you, looking across the sports ecosystem, I mean, where do you see the greatest disconnects between what academic institutions are offering currently and what is the requirement from employers and sports organization? And how do these disconnects affect the student placements and career ahead?
Okay. So thanks, Vishal, and the whole team for having me. And as my fellow, it's different to say academic oriented institutes. People have already spoken about a lot about the pointers. I'll be very straightforward about what exactly it means to have a professional in the sports industry. The sports industry is, we are looking at industry in India as a sunrise industry. And when we say sunrise industry, it is growing continuously. Like people who entered IT in 90s or the telecom or banking in early 2000, they exactly understand what the sunrise industry means. And when you come into sunrise industry, we honestly speaking, while the industry needs specialists, we need more of a journalist for doing a lot of things. I always like to give an example, and it's not a very good example, but it is still the thing that a specialist batter like Steve Smith or Ajinkya Rahane doesn't get a chance to play, but Akshar Patel plays every game. So when we look at this, it actually means something where when you're building something, the specialization required. I'm talking management side of it, not the science. Science needs specialists when it comes to sports science. So because I'm the director of Symbiosis School of Sports Science, we've done MBA Sports Management as a flagship product for last more than 10 years, and the BSc Sports Science, which is also one of considered to be very prominent course. Uh, I understand for a science perspective, we need a specialist, but from the management perspective, it is more of a journalist who are the people who can do everything. Because I heard you saying that the event guys get a red carpet. It is not event guys getting a red carpet. It is about a person who is willing to do everything gets a red carpet. If somebody says that मेरे को इतना ही करना, this is what I exactly I want to do, this is what I mean to do, or this is what I dream of doing. No, it's something what is required for that place or that role to do. I think it's those people required. So when you look at the academia and the industry requirement, and when we talk about say what the gap is Indian education system has trained people to be laborers, unfortunately. And what exactly we need is a leader. Because when you say that, okay, why do I somebody get a red carpet? Because that person is ready to take the bullet and call a spade a spade. And that is something which is required in our education system to be developed. In the sports specifically, since it's a new field, I think we can do this thing better and we can do it faster than any other industry. So that kind of leadership development is called soft skill development. Because see, everybody coming to sports, it's very simple. People are coming to sports, nobody's pushing them. No parents are pushing the kids to come into sports management or sports science. Luckily, 100% of the kids which come to Symbiosis are for sports science and sports management are there because they want to be there and not any uncle or auntie or father or mother putting the pressure that you need to be in sports. So that means the first 50% of the battle is already won because the intent is there. What remains is basically what you do with the intent. And that is where I again kind of beg to differ that one nation, one curriculum should be there. No, I think everybody brings a different way of doing something and the way it should be done. And that's what the uniqueness that even the country like India has, right? If one country, one language is not there and the one country, one dialect is not there, then I don't think we need a one country, one syllabus mechanism because everybody brings, North brings the hockey and athletics, where the South brings the badminton and tennis and those kind of things. So everything is different. What we need to develop in the whole ecosystem is how we empower these people with more and more opportunities. Unfortunately, in India, the sport has been a charity subject that we are still thriving on the CSR fund. Sports should not be a charity subject, and for that to grow, the corporate sector has to pitch in beyond IPL, and more than I think every corporate can start picking up a sport and start growing it, not as a CSR, but how to make it commercial because they know how to make business out of things. That is where I we required. I completely agree that we have a lot of viewership from the tier two, tier three, and rural area. How do we actually make sense out of that? So a lot of work. People also there's a problem when we people come for the careers in sports. They fancy that I want to work in IPL. I want to manage Dhoni or Virat Kohli. Okay, but a Virat Kohli or Dhoni, somebody I have been managing MS Dhoni for last 10 years. But when we talk about that, how many people have managed MS Dhoni in his whole career? But the ecosystem around him is huge. People need to understand what are they coming into sports for, and that development has to happen in the academia industry relationship. And that this is exactly where the placements matter. Its placement is the opportunity has to be grabbed. It is of no use if you are in the team for all the time and not scoring any runs. What matters is when you get a chance, you score the runs.
No, no,
And that
absolutely.
is what that is exactly is the linking between the academia industry and the placements are. I kind of went across the board to cover all the three topics, but thing. I hope I covered it. I didn't want to sound like an academician. I want to more sound like a practitioner, because I'm more of a practitioner than the academician. And I understand what exactly is needed for Indian ecosystem. We have people like Ahana sitting on the panel who exactly knows what the legal part of sports is all about, right? So
That's next on our agenda.
so that's a specialist. What we are looking at is a generalist to make sure that India reaches the dream of making India a sporting nation. We reach a dream of how can we make every kid play. We are talking about the Australian university here, right? It is the some of the numbers that we are staggering in US, which has done the research. There average kid is playing for 14 hours a week, and average Indian kid is playing for 40 minutes a week. So when we look at that, imagine what kind of opportunity we have at a grassroots level, what kind of opportunity you have at the development level. I run a football club in Pune called Rising Pune FC. I have 600 kids playing in a football club. It's not a charity; it's a business, and I know it's a damn profitable business. It is profitable than lot of other leagues in India. So, but people just want glamour in sports, and that is the unfortunate part when you look at the placement. So in Symbiosis, whenever students come to us, I tell them, if you come for glamour, I don't think that you are at the wrong place. Glamour will be a byproduct of what you do. So yeah, that is what it is. So placements are linked with the mindset, and mindset has to be developed by the academies or the institution rather than only the knowledge.
Really appreciate that. I think you bring the combination of your Symbiosis, your Pune FC, and the sports com. So that helps. Thank you for that. Anna, on to, of course, like Siddharth said, I mean, you work across sports and across the leagues and everything. So from a legal and regulatory perspective, if you have to sort of throw light on what has been the positive change from a policy perspective, from a regulation perspective, and any one or two areas that you think from your experience and expertise that you bring on the table needs immediate attention, or collectively as an industry we should look at that and we should sort of at least voice our opinion on.
Thanks, Vishal, and thank you everyone for having me. Special thank you to Sid for creating the pressure right before. But from a regulatory perspective, if I had to sum up, especially the last 18 months in Indian sport in a single line, I would say that we finally given our sporting ambition a policy, a legal spine, and also a funding engine. At least there's a start. I mean, while Sid said that it's not only CSR, but I mean, I think the progress, I'll cover it in a couple of minutes, but the progress we've made, especially in the recent past, has been phenomenal. And I guess, we're a room full of educators today. I seem to be pretty much the odd one out. I do lecture from time to time at management schools and law schools, but I don't necessarily belong to this business. But I guess to my mind, the thread, running through the three things that I spoke about, which is policy, legal spine, and funding engine, is the link between sport and education. So starting with policy, in July 2025, which is about a year ago, the government replaced a policy which was more than 2 decades old with the National Sports Policy 2025, which is also known as the Khelo Bharat Niti. Now, Khelo Bharat Niti has 5 pillars, and I guess the one that concerns this particular room the most is the fact of the integration of Khelo Bharat Niti with the National Education Policy 2020, right? That is one of the key pillars of Khelo Bharat Niti. Under this particular pillar, and the mission really is to integrate sports in school curricula and equip teachers with specialized training to promote sports education, right? And now with this particular policy in place, to my mind, I do think that it is for the first time that, physical education is being treated as a core subject rather than an afterthought, which to my mind will then create dual career pathways. Unfortunately, I was on the other side who had to make a choice. But I guess now with this focus, it's going to allow a young person to be a student and an athlete both at once rather than forcing a choice, right? That either you pick A or B. Coming to the law aspect of it, Over the past year, again, there's been a lot of development. We've had 3 statutes that have come into play. One is the National Sports Governance Act, which now pretty much gives federations an enforceable framework in terms of how they must be run. So we have a National Sports Board, which basically recognizes the federations. Then we have a National Sports Tribunal, which hopefully will lead to speedy resolution of disputes. And then we have mandatory athlete and women representation. So, I mean, if I was to put it in simple terms again, I mean, the governance of Indian sport is no longer been left to chance, and it has, come under a fairly robust regulatory framework. The second one here is anti-doping. While the National Anti-Doping Agency has always existed, it is only about 3 weeks ago that, it was on July 15th, that our National Anti-Doping Act was finally, brought into force. And what this does is that NADA is now a statutory body. It is an independent body aligned with the WADA, of course. And one of the crucial obligations on NADA, right, which is a statutory obligation, which is the mandate to educate. Because to my mind, I mean, the honest answer to a doping violation is not just, to sanction the athlete after the athlete is caught. It is to educate the athlete before they even commit that mistake. So I guess, I mean, we have recorded about 78, 80 odd adverse analytical findings in the first half of this year alone. And to my mind, a large part of that is, where education is the problem. Of course, we've made progress over the last half a decade in education. I think it's an area that Australia, through Sports Integrity Australia, is also working alongside us. And, our education material is now made available in sort of 10 odd languages. But I think this is an area that education can really help. I mean, we've unfortunately topped the charts of adverse analytical findings for the last 3 years, right? But this is an area that education can really help in. And third, I'm just going to digress a little and not restrict myself to the narrow definition of sport, but is our new gaming law. And in the new gaming law, I know that everybody lays emphasis on the fact that it bans real money gaming. What I am going to lay emphasis on and what really matters to educators is that this new gaming act now recognizes and legitimizes esports, right, at a competitive level. So, and that opens up a whole curriculum in terms of esports management, coaching, broadcast, event operations, what Sid said, right? You got to do it all. But which is basically where several applied programs from universities here on can be built in. And last but not the least, as Sid spoke about funding, right? Coming to the implementation part of it, I guess for that, I mean, everybody needs funds. And that problem also, at least over the last couple of months and more so, as you mentioned right in the beginning, that, on 31st July, a huge budget has been sanctioned. So there is progress on that end also. So, I mean, earlier this year, the Department of Public Enterprises, which was I think sometime in June, has made sport a common theme for like CSR, right? For our public sector companies, which now then channels real institutional funding is what I would say. And then, of course, what happened on 31st July, which is the 36,000 crore sanction over the next 5 odd years, which is about an 8-fold expansion. Since you asked about the challenges, and I've given this whole rosy picture of the developments in the last 18 odd months, right? I think
if we have to narrow down on, let's say, one challenge, one.
So I think it's all too new. 18 months, a lot of policy development has happened. So we don't need any more of that now. Now what you need is the practical implementation and capitalizing on the space that this regulatory framework has created, right? I mean, I think last year, Khelo India actually underspent their budget. So now you have a larger budget. Are you going to now be able to utilize it to its hilt and also capitalize on it? And of course, use it in the right manner. And I guess, I mean, it's great that Khelo Bharat Niti is tied into the national education policy. But the fact of the problem is, and that will remain, and the action plan will need to be seen, which I guess matters to everybody in this room today as well, that can sport really be embedded in schools and universities with trained teachers and creating those dual careers that we talk about, right? Because it seems straightforward on paper, but I think the hard practice, like to implement it on ground, is hard. And that, I guess, is where educators will stop being mere observers and become the mechanism in itself. And I mean, rightly, as Vic started off with saying that, and I couldn't agree more, that medals are indeed made in systems and not stadiums. So that's where I would say is the challenge.
Thank you very much. I think culmination of what happens at school, what happens at institute, and what happens from a policy perspective. I would request the Griffith team, like Naomi, to take over, and Rick to take over from what happens on the other side of the globe, and what are their learnings and what are their experiences that they bring to the table. So Naomi and Rick and Ashni, over to you.
Thanks very much, Vishal. I'm just going to attempt to share a presentation, and I guess we're just going through a little case study with Griffith, sort of front and center of what we have been doing in the elite athlete space. And I just want to check that is people are able to see this presentation.
Yes, we can.
Excellent.
Naomi, sorry. Yeah, it's appearing now. It was not in a presenter's mode, but now it's not in a presenter mode.
Yeah. Getting to that now. So I'm just going to be talking about how universities can support the high performance sporting system, and I guess the power of that support in that sport, and what it can actually do for universities and also the national sports system. So I'd firstly like to acknowledge First Nations people here in Australia and any of the lands that we're all gathering, and acknowledge past, present and emerging leaders. And particularly in Australia, we acknowledge the significant contribution our First Nations athletes have made to our sporting system. So here at Griffith, we have really lent into supporting elite athletes and the high performance system in a number of ways. We are a gold tier elite athlete friendly university recognised by the Australian Institute of Sport, one of the first universities in Australia to be recognised at this level. So we're partnering with, I guess, the premier organisation in elite sport in the Australian Institute of Sport to really support elite athletes in their journey. And we heard Vishal talk before about athletes choosing one career and being that the professional career. What we're doing in the system here in Australia is recognising and encouraging athletes to have what we call a dual career. So a career in sport and also working on a professional career through something like studying at university. Here are a couple of our sort of top stats, I guess.
Sorry, Naomi, sorry
Yes.
to interrupt you. Slides are not moving and we are seeing not the presenter slides.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry.
I wonder what's happening with that. I wonder if I go this way.
Yeah.
Can you see? Is that moving?
We
Yes.
can see the slides, but it's not the presenter's view. It's not the presentation view. It's you know how it is your we can scroll down the
It's a
slides and we can
presentation view for me. Sorry about that. Let me just try again. Is that the presentation view?
No, Naomi, it hasn't changed.
Oh.
No, but at least we can see the slides as you transition.
Yeah, so if you
that's okay.
transition, so we'll be able to see the slides. If you just
Yeah,
transition
it's
from
okay.
one to that's okay.
Otherwise,
That's
I mean,
We can work with that.
if I can interject, I think you just need to go to slideshow and then put play. So that should solve it.
I had done that.
Otherwise, we can just continue like this, Naomi. No worries.
Yeah.
Is that working?
No, I think it's the double screen. So let's go with this. You just keep
Okay,
scrolling
that's
down
fine.
and we should
Apologies.
be fine. Yeah.
Apologies for that. So Griffith have been recognised as the top elite athlete-friendly university in Australia. Currently, we've got a team that works in my area, the Griffith Sports College, and we support about 550 elite athletes that are also studying here at Griffith, and they're across about 40 different sports. Griffith is an institution that's been around for about 50 years, so we would say we're quite a young institution, but in that time we have supported more than 114 Olympians, 24 Paralympians, and around 100 Commonwealth Games athletes. At the most recent Commonwealth Games, we had 33 athletes from Griffith alone. So that made up a bit over 12% of the Australian Commonwealth Games team came directly from Griffith. Some of the support that we give through the Sports College is really individualised for the athletes, and that is what is key for us. But some of it's around offering athletes support on the way in, and we have admission bonuses for elite athletes where they can get into programs that they might have not got the rank from school to get into, but their elite athlete ability is supporting them to get into some of those programs. We personalise degree planning for athletes. So most of our athletes don't go through a 3-year degree in 3 years. They get personalised support and advice from the team that might see them complete a degree in 5 years, 6, 7, or sometimes even 8 years, but achieve amazing things on the international sporting scene during that time. So sort of reduced loads and studying part-time. We have lots of assessment flexibility and exam flexibility and supporting athletes around where they are actually able to do exams and assessments at different times. Sometimes they do it overseas, sometimes they do it when they come back so that they can still travel and compete. And these are the reasons we get such high numbers of athletes here at Griffith. I'll go into this a little bit more, but we've also got some really amazing facilities on campus at the university, and we're supporting the high performance space for those athletes. But leaning into some of the discussions that we've already had here today, it's also giving the opportunity for other students that are at Griffith that want to be in sport and around sport that are not necessarily athletes, the opportunity to get actual lived experience as a student in and around supporting some of our elite athletes when they're using these facilities on campus. Membership and probably what I should say is all of the photos that you see of athletes in this presentation today, these are all Griffith athletes, all Griffith international athletes. Tori that you see there just broke 11 seconds in the 100 sprint at the Commonwealth Games, first Australian woman to ever do that. She studies a cybersecurity degree with us. So in terms of getting membership to the Sports College, it's based on your sporting achievement, and we really recognise that athletes are on a journey coming out of school. Not all of them are at the level that Tori that you see on the screen there is at. A number of them are on what we call an emerging or a developing pathway in the sporting system in Australia, where we think they're going to go on to amazing things, but at the moment they might be 18-year-old athletes that are showing a lot of promise but are not yet competing on the international stage. As a guide for us, we have a look at what our athletes are doing sort of on the national scene. So usually our athletes would be representing their regional state at a national level or above to be gaining membership. About 12 months ago now, we entered into a partnership, which I'll go into, which is the Australian Olympic Partnership, where Griffith were recognised as the exclusive, so the only and also the inaugural Olympic Pathway University. As a part of that, we've got some really large scholarships that we allocate to athletes in Olympic sports, up to $40,000 over 2 years. We also have a number of really great sports excellence scholarships for athletes in professional sports, still Olympic sports, Paralympic sports, and also importantly, it's recognising that development pathway. We've got some development scholarships, smaller scholarships for athletes that are on this development pathway, which are allowing them to come into university, get some financial support, but also recognising that they're still starting their development journey, and they may then go on to those larger scholarships as they continue. I just thought it was worth touching on some of our most recent results at the Commonwealth Games. So as I said, we had about 33 athletes that were related to Griffith in some way. We had 16 students, 11 alumnus who had finished studying with us, with some internationals as well that study here with us or swim in our swim club. And, you know, of course, Australians in general are really quite dominant in the swimming space. So we had a lot of athletes that were at swimming and, you know, in particular, some incredible results there. We had Jenna Forrester, a current student. She had 3 gold medals. Meg Harris, who's a nursing student of ours, actually had 6 gold medals at the Commonwealth Games. Shayna Jack, who's just graduated, had a couple of gold as well. But athletics was particularly great for Australia, and we had Australia and Australia's fastest man, Lockie Kennedy, who's pictured there. He studies an engineering degree and a finance degree with us, and Tori Lewis, who I just spoke about before, also did particularly well with some gold medals, both of them overseas at the Com Games. And in the end, as was just mentioned, Griffith would have come 4th as a nation at the Commonwealth Games, and that's our medal tally there with 39 medals. I'm just going to touch on some of our Olympic results as well, because this is talking to how supporting high performance sport then drives some of the partnerships and also some of the research and the education that happens within a university around the reputation that we have now as an institution that is centred around elite athlete support. So at the last Olympics, Griffith had 38 athletes at the Paris Olympics that were competing. Again, this was a mixture of current students, alumni, and also some members of our Griffith Swimming Club. We had 10 gold medals from our athletes over there, second in the world, only behind Stanford University. So all other universities in the world with their students, and all universities put those sorts of stats up on their webpage. Stanford University was the only university that had more athletes. We had, at the Paris Olympics, really interestingly, we had 74% of our competing athletes were female. So we were talking, earlier in this webinar around leaning into supporting female athletes. It's something that Griffith have been able to do really well. And it's also something we research now around female athletes also really strongly. In the Paralympic space, we're also really pleased to have, a number of medals in that space and 12 athletes. It's a much smaller team, the Australian Paralympic team, compared to the Olympic team. So we still had a really good representation. A bit over 7% of the Paralympic team were from Griffith in some way, including sort of the flag bearers, alumnus, and the team captain is a current student of ours. The gender split in Paralympics was 50-50. And again, some great results there for us, which is something that we're really keen on sort of developing more and providing more support to our Paralympians who want to study as well here at Griffith and also want to swim. We've just had a para swim program start. So I'm just sort of setting that scene because as an institution, as a university, that has allowed us now to partner in sport and also look at how we're delivering some of our sport programs, whether they be for current students that are not athletes, some are, of course, but also in the research space. So some of our key partners here in this space here are, the Australian Olympic Committee, which I'll talk about a little bit more. Swimming Australia, which is a really key sport. Swimming is a really key sport here for us in Australia. The Queensland Academy of Sport and the Australian Institute of Sport, which are big government-funded sporting organisations that are really around the development of athletes, support of athletes in Australia, but also coach development, and they're really key in the research space as well. There's a number of other high performance national sporting organisations, and also a key sport in Australia, Rugby League. We partner with the Gold Coast Titans here on one of our campuses as well. I mentioned it before, the Griffith and the Australian Olympic Committee partnership is really our key one for us. It has recognised, the Australian Olympic Committee has recognised Griffith as the #1 university in the country for elite athlete support, and then has lent in around how we work together as the committee and also as Griffith to continue to support athletes on this dual career pathway. So through scholarships, but also through some really interesting work that I'm really proud of, being a world first in recognising prior learning for Olympic athletes. So this is where the university has recognised the skills, the attribute and the years of training and skill acquisition that have happened as an athlete, and have recognised it with some support in the degree program to actually take some subjects off degrees, some undergraduate degrees, and recognising that learning in that way. It provides those athletes with, a head start in those degrees. The degrees will not take as long for them to do, but also don't cost as much money. And the partnership also, interestingly for us, then connects us with other organisations that are interested in sport, particularly high performance sport and that Olympic space. Another really key partnership for us is the Swimming Australia partnership, and this really brings together really nicely how a university can work around the whole of sport. So we have an age group program for sort of underage kids, a national program, an Olympic swimming program, and now a Paralympic swimming program here at Griffith, most of which is delivered on campus at our facilities. We see a lot of coach development into the system and also athlete development, obviously, through this. But importantly, we also see student opportunities. So for students that are interested in sport, whether it's sport management, it's exercise science, exercise physiology, physiotherapy, to be in and around these high performance athletes and to have the opportunity to be in that daily performance environment at different times, developing their skills while they're a student, and then go on to work in that sports system afterwards is really key. And it also provides a great environment for research, particularly in the para-performance space. At the moment, we're seeing some really interesting ideas about how some research might happen around this. So you've got a university with the performance program on the university, and then you can see how easy that is for academics and also students to be around and supporting the program with research, but also the program is then back supporting our academics with being able to provide access into a program like that. In addition to the performance program with Swimming Australia, we also have a commercial agreement with them, which is around branding, again, research, but internships into Swimming Australia, which is not in and around the performance space. That's in and around a lot of other things that happen around sport. It's around the commercialization of sport. It's around communications and journalism. It's also around some of the business of sport, whether it be in accounting or the promotion. Sometimes it's in events as well. So it's giving this opportunity for, again, it's students that are not necessarily athletes. In fact, most of the time they're not, but they are students that are interested in sport, wanting to work in sport, and will go on to be future leaders in sport. We do something similar with another key sport of ours, which is Paddle Australia. We have a lot of high performance athletes in paddle, Jess Fox in slalom canoe, who you may know of, but also a lot in the still water, both in the Olympic and also the Paralympic space. And this is an area where we've lent in, particularly around female performance research and having embedding some PhD expertise into Paddle Australia through Griffith, and really lending into an area of female performance physiology and research. this, you're getting a little bit of an idea of you can see a little bit of our facilities here. So this is in the high performance gym overlooking our pool, and actually to the left of that, which you can't see, is our track. And we're able to support some of these partnerships that we have. We have also other sports that come in and do camps-based activities. So national teams will come in and bring international teams in and use the pool or use the track or use the gym together. Again, this is providing opportunities for students and research, but also the exposure for the university to other high performance systems and also teams, and then actually provide some income at times as well. Really key collaborators for us in the system and how we're trying to support the system. Obviously, there's a big element of how do we support the athletes. We want in our Australian system, we want more medals, we want better athletes that are coming out at the end of sport as better human beings, and they have completed degrees and they're going to go on to other things. Sometimes they're in sport, sometimes they're not in sport, but they come out of their sporting environment having had a good experience and being supported to be able to contribute to community, to inspire community, but also, you know, work in meaningful ways, as I said, whether it's in sport or outside of sport. And we collaborate for these students, you know, student athletes. Some of them study online. Not all of them are based here on campus, but we collaborate across the whole of sort of the government system there through the New South Wales Institute of Sport. I mentioned the Queensland Academy of Sport and the Australian Institute of Sport as well. So it's a little bit, actually there's a little bit more of an example of where you can see our facilities. It's a little bit of a snapshot of what we're doing here in Griffith and actually how you can support the system in a number of different ways. And also it's really something that's advantageous to not only the athletes and the sporting system, but also to the university.
Very exciting, Naomi, and I'm full of compliments. But for the purpose of time, and of course, obviously, the recent Commonwealth also adds to the accolade of the gold medals. We were discussing you would be 4 in terms of countries if we count that. India aspires to be that. I love how you say you are the Olympic pathway university. I do think that such kind of things would be very interesting in India as well. You've been hearing our panelists from institutions and the legal system here talk about some of the challenges, etc. What are some of the ways that Australian institutions who have been the leaders in athlete performance, in development, in the main, I think, fundamental problem statement was how do you see career and sports together? And you are an example of that. So what are some of the ways in which you can collaborate with some of the people who've been talking of these challenges here?
Yeah, look, absolutely can collaborate around what the system development looks like. And it's not something that a year ago Griffith decided we wanted to be this incredible institution and have all these athletes. It's something that we've developed over the years. You know, and with change and with shifts around that sort of thing, it takes some time, absolutely, but it also takes some looking at where you are as a system and what are some of the key levers that you can pull on. So what are the government, how can government invest in it? What is in it for universities? How can they invest in supporting these athletes and supporting sports as well? So at Griffith, you'll see we've had a really clear direction in supporting Olympians in particular, with results around really leveraging the number of high performance athletes we've got, particularly in the Olympic space, but then looking at some of those key sports and how can we support those key sports. So swimming, for example, we're supporting them with coach development, athlete development in our program. I support a number of swimmers that study here, but also supporting in and around research, but student opportunities as well. So we've had students that have come through this system, not athletes, that have done PhDs or study at Griffith and have gone on to organisations within swimming and now working in those organisations.
I'll move on to the people from our side. So, Akanksha, if I can start with you, how do you see our schools being able to collaborate with the Australian institutions such as Griffith? Akanksha? Or maybe I can call on the Manipal team, Dr. Arun and Dr. Ren. What are some of the ways that you think maybe Manipal can become the India Olympic pathway university? And how can maybe a university like Griffith assist or collaborate? Is it in the form of curriculum? Is it in the form of exchange of best practices? Dr. Arun?
Yeah. Can you just repeat the question, if you don't mind this?
So how do you think a university like Manipal can collaborate with Australian institutions such as Griffith in order to fill in some of the challenges and maybe aspire to be able to fulfill some of the things that Naomi has showcased for us today?
Okay. And first of all, in general, happy to share that we are already having an MOU with the Griffith. In terms of the Cototel PhD, we have already launched in the last year the 2+2 articulations in the PhD program. First 2 years they work in Manipal and then next 2 years in Griffith. Similarly, we have an exchange, academic exchange in the other disciplines like in the engineering as well as in the other areas also. With respect to the sports, maybe one of the important aspect with respect to the academics, maybe at the undergraduates or at the postgraduate level sports specific programs, we will be very happy to initiate the further discussions with the Griffith in terms of maybe a joint degree or the dual degree or 2+2 articulations. These are the various opportunities we can discuss further with the Griffith.
Okay. And Ahana, what do you see in terms of how can the government pick up some of these ideas? And there are so many collaborations that we see happening with Australian universities side. How do you see the other parts of the ecosystem beyond universities collaborating with learning from Australian best practices?
I think, there's a reasonable amount of somebody had also raised that question. I saw one of the attendees, right, from an NCSSR perspective, which is the National Center of Sports Science and Research, which basically primarily has the objective of increasing the longevity of the athlete from a sports science perspective, enhancing their performance from a sports science perspective, developing the athlete to their maximum potential, also aiding other things, like one of the things that I brought into play, right, from an anti-doping perspective, education, but also enabling testing and certification of food supplements. So that becomes a key thing. Then we have the whole management and rehabilitation side of sports injuries, right? Which, I mean, today in India, I guess athletes don't necessarily understand the best practices as far as rehabilitation is concerned. So I think, partnering with agencies like NCSSR, which have already been initiatives that have already been developed by the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, can be another aspect rather than just an educational institute to an educational institute partnership.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think, Naomi, around that? Because research is a very interesting area, but that would be intensive for the Indian. We are at the very nascent stage of building our education ecosystem here in sports. So what would be, do you think, as a country, for institutions and people here, what would be the first way to collaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of sort of some shared knowledge and experience, one of the other things that Griffith have been doing with some of our Pacific neighbours, and also moving into sort of the Asian area as well, is some talent identification and actually some key sort of coaching development skills that can be sort of developed in areas where, because that is some of the key areas that we need to look in around education. How do we develop coaches? How do we develop the systems around the coaches as well to develop the athletes that are then going to go on to put India on, the world stage, is, performing, even better, and having a look at some of, the medal opportunities. To hear some of, and I'm not sure who said it, the research around average sport, interaction in India at 40 minutes a week. Was that right? That is, there's so much potential there. And in terms of how the whole system works, education is key around developing coaches and developing people in the sporting system that can put in good infrastructure to have athletes come through and be supported. And then when that happens as well, as a community, everybody is proud of your national heroes and the sporting achievements that happen, and then they want to be more involved in sport, around sport, whether it's volunteering, whether it's working in sport, and they see it as a bigger career potential.
Kashyap from Masters Union has always taken some innovative ways in terms of teaching, and listening to all of this that you've seen here, some areas where you think you can pick up something from institutions like Griffith, and what are the ways that you see again disruption happening, like you've disrupted some things in Masters Union already possibly. And so that I'll come to you next.
Absolutely. I feel we work with several universities across the globe now, approx now 25 universities. These are in form of exchange programs, semester programs, and I feel the best practices when it comes to sports, what Griffith is doing, which we would, while the inaugural program, which is sports management and gaming, the MBA that we provide here at Masters Union, we touched less on the science part, but I believe in terms of an exchange in the starting days, which is in the winter space, we can definitely have an exchange program with the students going and understanding the best practices at Griffith, spending time for a week or for 15 days, because that aspect, while they understand the ecosystem of athlete management and other aspects of league operations, it's very best to understand the people who are doing it from so long and from such good standards. Going on, obviously, if there's the aspect of co-developing a program and running it here in India with the bi-weekly exchange or by academic exchange, we can work that, because we've done with Imperial, we've done with universities in UK and Spain and France already, and I'm sure we might have some already SOPs and contracts in place with universities in Australia. We have a separate team for that who looks after all the institutional partnerships, but happy to connect and work along with Griffith as well. Yes, because of our co-program, which is sports management and gaming, is only focused on the aspects of building the management side, business side, and the larger aspect of entrepreneurial side, which is very important to the pedagogy of Masters Union. And if that's managed and that we can bring across with Griffith, that'll be great.
Anna, you want to contribute something?
Yeah, just as an afterthought in terms of what Naomi said, right? And just to bring in this aspect, now the National Sports Governance Act makes it mandatory to have a certain number of retired athletes on board federations to run federations. And there's a fair amount of debate in India in terms of whether athletes really are capable of managing the federations or not. Are they good managers rather? So even for a program to be developed for retired athletes or something like that, which can train them to then run federations, right, might be an interesting space that has recently gotten created, is just what I wanted to chip in.
Yeah. Siddharth?
I love that idea. I really firmly believe that retired athletes do have a lot of lived knowledge. And in fact, I'm a retired athlete myself, but a lot of lived knowledge.
Can I add, and a gold medalist?
Yes, a gold medalist at the Olympics, yes. And I think we have a lot to give, like training around that is absolutely necessary, and education around that is absolutely necessary. But athletes have got an experience that can't be taught in any other setting. So there is so much to gain from having athletes around grassroots all the way through to high performance systems.
Siddharth, besides managing Dhoni, what do you think we can make our 1.4 billion population excited about?
Honestly speaking, the people need to be excited about what sports brings to them. Sports is not looked at only on the ground. Sports is something to be looked at as a lifestyle. Uh, there are benefits. You may. It's that's why there's a pyramid, right? The bottom of the pyramid is at least come and participate. So participation to compare to amateur to elite. That pyramid is very important for people to understand. So when we are talking about comparing with any of the Westerners or even the Australia, the sports is part of their lifestyle. In India, we have to make sure that get the kids to play on thing is more important for us. So that is where excitement is create the whole ecosystem exciting where the kids can come and play, kids come and enjoy. The parents should give the time to understand what benefits the sports bring to table. That's why what Anna mentioned and even what Navi mentioned about the retired athletes, uh, they being a role model and making sure that this is something can be taught at a different level, I think is very interesting concept. So making the heroes kind of thing, hero stories is I think something very important for us to get
Siddharth,
get excited.
how can symbiosis tie up with, say, Griffith and be called the Olympics Pathway University? I'm loving that word, by the way. And how can you become the facilitator through some exchange of best practices with Griffith?
Honestly speaking, it is something that is not happened overnight for Griffith. It's a legacy of decades and decades of work to make it into Olympic. Even if I call symbiosis to any Indian university to claim that they can become a Khelo India pathway, that is also good enough for us right now. That is the sad state of affairs. So a lot
But
can happen. As I said, I think
what can you partner with, say, an Australian institute for? What would you like to? If I were to say one thing that Symbiosis would love to collaborate on, what would that be?
the Symbiosis is a health promoting university, so it is not about the winning the medals. I think there is nobody can speak in front of Naomi when it comes to Olympics here, but it is not only about a medal. Winning the medal is a byproduct of first qualify, compete, and complete. And that lifestyle development is something very important that needs to develop, and that kind of anything that is on the social economic development part of it on the sports side, if anything that Griffith has, it will be more interesting than understanding what sports management is. I think every country runs the management differently. If you want to look at a pure sports management perspective of it, not science part of it, then we have the biggest of the examples of Premier League, La Liga, the rest of the world. So it is not, and even IPL has no lesser than example when it comes to movement. But how the sports economy can be developed, how the societies can be developed using sports as a fundamental, anything on that is there. I think that will be more interesting for me to explore from a initiative like Symbiosis.
Last question, maybe Kashyap, you have your hand up.
Sure. So just one quick thing which run across that at Masters Union we have a concept of food lab, where if you see our last 5 to 6 years that we have done, a lot of our startups that have gone here have created their own D2C spaces, specifically in the food space. And while they are studying here, because they're part of the food lab challenge, they have starting their own cloud kitchen, and they sell on Zomato and Swiggy and etc. Now, part of sports management program, a lot of students right now who have come here are developing their first initial startups in the nutrition space. So while getting on podium is one, I believe India also really need to work on the nutrition and fitness space. And I feel the best practices that we can learn from Griffith is actually on the science of nutrition and fitness. Because I feel there's still a lot of thing to be developed. We had Fast Enough, Hydro, No Secrets coming. But still, we are yet to work on that aspect a lot. So if there's like something collaboration that we can do while we learn from them and take their best practices, but doing a co-developed food lab program for sports, for nutrition, happy to help with our campus facility, with our professors, masters, and their best practices from Griffith. Happy to develop on that.
And there's a question from Vidhi, with which I'll hand over to a Austrade team as well. Question on how there can be some opportunities for SMEs. So Smriti and Vic, if you could take that and then take over the balance part of the conversation.
I'll jump in. I would actually be able to answer that question in some of the slides that I'll be asking Vishal to share shortly. But firstly, I'd just like to highlight that this has been such an engaging discussion. We've covered a breadth of topics, but we've also gone quite deep in those topics, and, you know, covering everything from infrastructure to, I loved your point, Dr. Maya, about the single national curriculum and how important that is. We've covered coach development, and Akanksha, I think, Ahana, you raised the points on anti-doping and the legislation around that, as well as, you know, we've touched on grassroots and diversity and inclusion. I think it's been fabulous. Naomi, I would just like to thank you for all of the insights that you've shared with us from Griffith's point of view. You've very well positioned how Australian universities can offer lessons, but also partnerships to the Indian ecosystem, because Indian universities really do sit at that intersection of engaging with industry, research, and of course the strength and the quality of the curriculum. This you know, noting that this conversation has been so powerful, this roundtable is actually the first of a 3-part series that we're going to be running over the coming months, because we've recognised and demonstrated here today that there is an opportunity to strengthen but also deepen our understanding of the opportunities and the challenges that are facing India's ecosystem. And in every session, we will be highlighting case studies and success stories from Australia. So watch this space, because we'll be releasing some new dates and themes for upcoming sessions. Vishal, if you could please share my slides. I wanted to just take a moment to talk about how this series of webinars are feeding into, or a stepping stone into, Austrade's larger program of work. Vishal, do you have access to my slides there? Thank you. Thank you. So as Vic noted earlier on in the session, our Honourable Prime Ministers made an announcement last month now around the G'day Namaste Week, which is going to be held in India between the 7th and the 11th of December, really highlighting collaboration opportunities and very strategic dialogue on the themes of culture, education, business, and of course, sports. As a part of the sports program, Austrade's going to be running the Australia-India Sports Mission for Australian companies and institutions, and also the Australia-India Sports Industry Summit. These will be split. So the mission is going to be held in Delhi on the 7th and 8th of December, and then we'll carry on to Mumbai for the Sports Industry Summit on the 9th and 10th of December. The objective of both of these programs that are going to be running back to back are really to bring together sports stakeholders from Australia and from India to exchange knowledge, explore collaboration opportunities, and then identify opportunities for supporting India's sporting ambitions, supporting the sporting ambitions. On this slide here, you'll see a QR code, and I'm going to be inviting Australian education institutes and companies to scan the code, and that's your opportunity to register your EOI to attend the mission. And if you can please flick to the next slide, Vishal, there's an email address that's noted here, and that's for anybody who's interested in participating in the Sports Industry Summit in Mumbai. So that's sportsinquiries@austrade.gov.au. We will be starting the process of collating registrations. So that's really back to the question that I think Vidhi had asked earlier about the support for SMEs. Programs like this are how Austrade will support businesses and SMEs of all sizes, businesses of all sizes, in understanding the opportunities in the market, how to navigate challenges to be able to leverage those opportunities, and then supporting with some partnership opportunities as well. I'd like to wrap up there and just also to acknowledge Bhavna and Vishal and the Acumen team for your partnership in pulling together this program. It's been a pleasure, but also looking forward to a few more of these sessions, and I think that we've got a lot of work to do on bringing this conversation to light. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the panelists.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for
Thank
taking
you.
out time. Thank you.
Thank you.